Hello everybody! So, today is going to be my first installment of a new series that I'm going to start. This series is going to be called, Why Do They Even Compare? So, what this series is going to be about is I'm going to take two games that I find are often compared to each other. I'm going to go into them both, break them down, and just see if they're really worthy of being compared to, or if they're two just very different games. Alright? So without further ado, let's get started. Alright, so the very first two games that I'm going to break down and see if they really do compare is two games that I find that have been starting to get compared to each other very recently, and I honestly don't think that they should be. So the two games that I say are being compared to each other too much are Mech Online and Hawken. So, before I get started, I'm going to explain just how I'm going to do this. So, I'm going to break down both of these games one at a time in different sections. For these two games, the sections are going to be combat, just an overview of the combat, what's special about the specific combat, anything like that. Level design, how the levels are made, their sizes, their depth, if they have many different levels, if there's different, hills, tunnels, stuff like that. Is it well made? Is it too much of a camp fest for certain games? Anything like that. Customization. For those of you who don't know, Hawken and Mech Online are both mech-related games. You're in the cockpit of a mech, a giant robot. There's going to be a lot of customization options. And lastly, mech options. So, both of these games have different options for different mechs that you can use. I'm going to break them down and see just what you can get from all these different mechs. So, before I get started into breaking down both of these games, I'm going to state the very obvious and very big similarities right off the bat that these two games have. Number one, very obvious, they're mech games. You are piloting a mech, you go around, you destroy people, they're mech games. That's obvious. Okay, second one. Currently, at the time of me making this video, they are both in open beta. But, they are both very playable. They're very stable. I have honestly only found maybe one or two very small bugs. They're both a lot of fun, and there shouldn't be too much problem playing with them at this time. So the next one is that they are both based off of the free-to-play business model. Now, what that means is that you can play the game without paying for it. It is free to play. You can download them both right now and have fun with it. But let's say that you want a little bit of a jump start at the beginning. You don't want to have to play with the default mechs right off the bat. What you can do is you can pay real-life money and get the respective currency. You can get that currency, you can go into the stores in the game, and then you can buy different things. You can buy mechs, you can buy weapons, items, consumables, stuff like that for real-life money. It's more of a, do you want to play this game more, or would you just want to spend money on it? That's all it is. It's not neither one of these are very pay-to-win. It's not bad. Everything's very well balanced. And they're, like I said, they're both in open beta. So, before I get started, I just want to say that this is less of a compare between the two games and more of a double review. Okay? And, lastly, before I get started, I want you all to know that I am playing both these games payless. I have not put a single dime into these games. I want you to see what you get right out of the box, so to speak. Just so you know that everything that I'm doing in these games, all the footage that you see, I have not spent real money on it. I'm not saying that you shouldn't spend real money on it. These devs have put a lot of time and effort into the game, and they should absolutely be paid for what they do. So, the first game I'm going to look at is Hawken. So, the first category is combat. Combat for Hawken is relatively similar to a lot of first-person shooters. It's fast and simple-ish. By simple, I don't mean that you just run around, shoot, and that's all you do. Not necessarily true. You're in a mech. There has to be some form of variance, right? So, it's a game that can easily get you engaged. It puts you in the game, you get in, you play, and you have fun. I think Hawken is a blast. It's, like I said, simple-ish. So, in the combat, you have, obviously, your mech. And your mech has two weapons. It has your primary and your secondary. Your secondary is always the same. You cannot change your secondary. Your primary, there are different options, and I'll get into that in the customization section. So, in combat, if you were to customize your mech with these, you could use deployables and consumables. Deployables such as turrets or shields, consumables such as, repair buffs, stuff like that. Healing in this game is not an overtime. You can't just go hide in the corner and automatically heal per se. But there is healing in this game. Healing is an action skill. What you need to do is, by default, it is bound to the C key. You hold on the C key, your mech stops, you cannot attack, you cannot move, you don't have a mini-map, your HUD is very limited, and a little bot will come out and start to fix you up. You can do that all the way to full health, if you don't get caught. The thing about this action skill, heal, is that if you get caught by the enemy while you're healing, chances are you're not going to live. It takes you a considerable amount of time, a few seconds, for you to stop healing and get back in the game. For me, the biggest problem with this is getting reoriented. Because when you use your action skill, you are put into the third-person view. You can see everything around you, so you can see if enemies are coming up on you, but not on a mini-map. It's only third-person. And when I'm done healing, you go right back into first-person, and sometimes it can be a little disorienting. So, a little tip, face your mech in any direction where you might think that there is enemies coming for you. One of the unique features about Hawken's combat system is your use of fuel. You have a jetpack on your mech. Now, most games, or not most games, a lot of games have jetpacks, but the jetpacks in Hawken are very special, very specific to this game. The jetpack really has weight because you're in a mech, and your fuel reserve isn't all that big by default. Now, you can use a jetpack to reach certain heights, but there is a max height that your mech can reach, and I believe that is in relation to your weight limit on your mech. You have heavies, mediums, and lightweights. Obviously, lightweights are going to be able to reach greater heights, but all in all, they can all fly, so to speak. Now, you also use that jetpack to sprint or dash. What that is really a fast way to move forward. It's kind of like a glide or a skiing. You just go forward. Now, in this time, you can't attack. You can't even see your guns for the most part. And it takes maybe a second for your weapons to get re-readied after you stop sprinting. Now, you can also, in addition to flying and dashing, you can also dodge. Now, you can dodge left or right in kind of a sidestep motion. But it's very useful in combat. It's very fluid, but it has a time delay. So, what that means is, you can dodge, but you have to wait about a half a second, I want to say, until you can dodge again. Now, a half a second might not be too much, but when someone's pelting you with bullets, that's a lot. And to wrap all of that up, the jetpack, the dash, and the dodge all run on the same fuel reserves. There's a little gauge at the bottom of your screen on your Mech, and that tells you how much of that you can do. I can't tell you how many times I've been caught if I were to go flying and then an enemy would come by. I'd stop flying, land on the ground, try and dodge, and I have no fuel. Or try and run away, no fuel, and you get caught. So you really need to micromanage that. In addition to your fuel reserves, you have heat. You need to watch your heat capacity. Weapons cause heat, and when you maximize your heat, your guns shut down, you can't be as effective, you're very vulnerable, you need to go and cool down. Now, lastly, back when I said that this game was like most FPSs, what I meant is that you can go in, you can shoot, you can kill, you die, you respawn, you come back, you do it all again. It's very fast, but it gets you in the game, and it's a lot of fun. So, right now, in this beta, there are 4 game modes for Hawken. There's Team Deathmatch, which is the usual Team Deathmatch. You see whichever team tries to get the most amount of kills, and there's also a time limit. But, more often than not, that time limit is reached before the death limit, or the kill limit, or the score limit, or anything like that. So the game is actually really nice. There's a lot of funnel points. You can set up a perch. You really need to stay with your team, because if you get outnumbered, you're done. Those bullets will really bring your health down. Second game mode is Deathmatch. Essentially, it's free-for-all, every man for himself. Relatively self-explanatory. Then, there's Missile Assault. Missile Assault, there's 3 missile bases, or missile silos, or whatever you want to call them, that you need to control for your team. Essentially, it's like Conquest, stuff like that. You need to hold the different points, and whoever gains the most points at the end of the level wins. Then, there's something called Siege. Now, what happens in Siege is that you have to go and collect energy. You have to take that energy, and then you have to bring it to your battleship of sorts. Once you fill up your battleship, you can launch that battleship at your enemy base. Now, that battleship, once it gets to a certain point, can start attacking your enemy base. And when the enemy base has been destroyed, you win. But, in the center of the map, there is an anti-air artillery gun. Now, whoever holds that essentially holds the sky. So, say that you got your airship in the air, but the other team has the anti-air cannons. You might get in a couple shots with your ship, but they'll take it down pretty fast. So you need to keep them both to stay alive. Essentially, it's kind of like a giant game of tug-of-war. A very complex and mech-related tug-of-war. So, in conclusion, combat is nice and fluid, it's fast, but simple. It's like most FPSs in the sense that you can go in, you kill, you die, you respawn, you come back, and you can do it all over again. It's a nice way to get you engaged. So, all in all, the combat is awesome. So, the next section is level design. The level design for Hawken is about, I want to say, medium-sized maps, but they have a lot of depth to them. Now, what I mean by depth is, although, length and width-wise, the maps aren't huge, but they're a decent size, but they have a lot of levels to them. There's a lot of tunnels, there's a lot of back routes, there's high and low points, medium points, there's chokeholds, there's lots of tunnels, there's definitely places where you can create flanks, and there's usually, if it's a large map, you have jump pads which allow you to get to different heights. There's different angles that you can get to. If you're a sniper class, you can sit up there and snipe, but watch your back, because there's definitely a way to get behind you. When it comes to Hawken's level design, I find that some of the maps can be a little maze-ish. There's large buildings, they kind of all look alike, so you really need to know your way around. But, for the most part, at the center of it all, there's a kill zone. The kill zone, I like to call it, is a place where teams just can't help but meet and just slaughter each other. And of course, whoever has the most skill on their side usually wins that fight. Now, there's different hot points, or kill zones, as I again like to call them, in most maps. These can be traversed and used in either advantage or disadvantage. There's usually different height levels to them that people can sit up on a perch and snipe from, or just bombard people, place some turrets down. There's a lot of neat things that you can do with this. All in all, the level design for this game is very unique. At first glance, they're just not huge maps, but in the end, they have a lot of depth to them. There's a lot of levels, nice tunnels, so you can sneak around, get behind enemy lines. But be careful, you don't want to get caught by yourself, because that never ends well. So, this ends the level design section for Hawken. The next section for Hawken is the customization. Customization in Hawken isn't too vast, but it's a happy medium. It's very self-explanatory. You have the option to choose your primary weapon, but not your secondary weapon. Your secondary weapon is usually an explosive of some sort, but it always has a secondary function. For right now, primary weapons to choose from, there are 3 of them, and they are different for every mech. They usually have something to do with the first primary that you get. For example, the very first mech that you get, the very first primary, is an assault rifle. Next is a submachine gun, and after that, it's a minigun. So, all in all, they're machine guns of sorts. Next is your deployables and consumables. So you get a choice to pick from deployables. Now the deployables that everyone gets are all the same. The only difference is the primary weapon choice. So, for deployables, you can use turrets, shields, EMPs, things like that. Some of the shields are passable, like they create a bubble above you, and other of them are impassable, they just create a destroyable shield that's in front of you. It's good for really getting rid of a chokehold. So, as for consumables, they're pretty self-explanatory. You use them, and they'll do something to you. For example, a repair buff. You can use it, and it'll repair you and some of your teammates around you in a quick manner. Next, there are internals. Internals were recently added, and what they do is they give you a percentage towards something. For example, plus 3% max armor, but they give you a negative as well. Negative 1.5 second movement speed. So there's a positive and negative to them. Now there's offensive internals, there's supportive internals, and then there's other internals that affect your jetpack in a way. Now, for other levels of customization, you can customize taunts of sorts, little emotions that you can trigger your mech to do to show off. You can do a little color changing, but most of that stuff is you have to pay real money for it. You have to use, in this case, Hawken credits. So, all in all, the customization for Hawken isn't very vast, but it's simple and to the point. You don't have to spend hours dealing with this. If you just want to set up something quick, Hawken is the way to go. You sit down, you can spend a couple minutes picking your weapons, picking a few internals, whatnot, mix and matching, but other than that, it's not too hefty. So, the final section is mech options. Unfortunately, mech options is honestly where I feel Hawken lacks. Although it does have a wide variety of mechs that you can choose from, they're kind of simple and to the point. They're very specific as what they can do. For example, you can choose the sniper class, but that sniper class has very limited armor. And there's nothing you can really do about that because you are stuck with that sniper class. You can't change it out of a sniper class once you buy it. You're stuck with that sniper class. And another example is if you choose a brawler of sorts, if you choose a mech that can get in there close, you have a decent amount of armor, but you need to be up close. You cannot snipe. So, when you start Hawken, you are given the beginning mech. It is a recruit mech, so to speak. It starts with an assault rifle and a little missile launcher of sorts. Now, from time to time, Hawken does do these things called test drives. Now, what that means is they'll let everybody use these mechs for a certain amount of time for free, just to, get the feel for them and see if you want to spend money on them. Now, you don't have to spend real money on these mechs. You can earn points in the game to buy them without actually spending money. But of course, if you just want to get in and play and you want to get honestly, in my opinion, bit of a better mech, you can throw some real life money down and you can get what you want. But I'm not going to badmouth the beginning mech because I used that for quite a while. And it did its good, I'm telling you. But in the end, unfortunately, the mech options for Hawken are very limited, in my honest opinion. But that doesn't mean I don't play it all the time. So, in conclusion, I'm going to leave a few bullet points up just to kind of sum everything up. So, for the combat, it's fast, simple, and easy to get used to. There's dodging, stuff like that, jetpacks, and small amounts of micromanaging with heat and your fuel. Level design. Medium-sized maps all around, but have really nice depth. Tunnels, easy places to hide, and flank. Customization is a little limited, but it's short and to the T. If you don't want to spend hours customizing your mech, then this is the game for you. You just hop in, throw some weapons on it, get ready, and get out there. Mech options, as I've said, is where I think Hawken kind of lacks, but they do have a pretty good variety of mechs to choose from. And they all have their specific skills and locations. Okay, on to MechWarrior Online. MechWarrior Online's combat is a little different from Hawken. It's, in the beginning, a little slow, but very challenging. You are doing pretty well, in my honest opinion, if you get any kills at all in this game. It is very difficult to zone in and get a kill. For this game, you can actually take apart mechs, limb by limb. If you focus fire on an enemy mech's arm, it will fall off eventually. If you focus fire on his legs will fail. If you focus on the cockpit, any type of HUD will fail on the enemy mech. Now, in MechWarrior Online, there is no healing. You do not heal over time. There is no healing action skill. You are what you are, and you have what you have. There is also no respawn. So, as in usual, it is 12v12. Both game modes that this game offers, if you kill all the enemy players, the game is over and that team has won. Whoever got the most kills. Now, I believe that this gives a really nice depth to MechWarrior Online. It gives a real challenge to it. It makes it a real nail-biter. It doesn't let you just corpse run it like most games do. It really makes you sit there and plan everything out. And in this game especially, you need to stay with your teammates. If you get ganged up on, you get taken down like that. And it's not fun sitting there watching your team play. One very peculiar thing about this game and the way it does matches is when you're dead, as I've said. There's no respawning. Now, When you're dead, you have two choices. You can spectate the rest of your team, or you can leave the match. You can wait to the end of the match if you want to see if you win, but at the end of the match, you don't go on to another game. You don't go on to the next level. You have to exit the match. There's no matchmaking after that. You have to exit, go back to the launcher, and jump back into another game. Which I thought was a little weird, but it definitely randomized the games and made it so you're not guaranteed a complete slaughterfest every single time if you just so happen to play against a really good team. So, as I've stated, this game has a low kill count. I think in the few hours that I've played this game, the most amount of kills I've ever gotten in one game is 2 kills. And I'm not saying that I'm the best player out there, because I am far from it. But that was only because that it was a bit of kill stealing. And I'll admit it. Now, the most challenging part of MechWarrior Online is getting used to the controls. The controls are very different from most games I've ever played. How it is that you can move forward, and yet you can turn the mech's torso another direction, face another direction, while you move in the same direction that you had originally set out for. Now, this is really good when it comes to combat. Say you just want to keep moving forward, but you want to shoot to the right or left, you can do that. But in order for you to turn to the right or left and to move in that direction, you actually have to move your legs to there. It doesn't do it automatically for you unless you click the F key, which aligns your legs to your body. The mechanics are a little weird to get used to, but once you get used to it, this game's combat is a blast. It's very challenging. It's all nail-biting. And I think that if you just give it the time and you take it easy, you learn the basics, you'll be having fun in no time. So, in conclusion, the combat for MechWarrior Online is very different, but awesome. It's very challenging, very hard to get used to at first, but in the end, it definitely suits its playstyle. Next on the checklist for MechWarrior Online is level design. The level design for this game is large maps, for the most part, that are divided into tunnels or canals, and there's hills on either side of them. From what I can see, most maps kind of end up in a kill zone where both teams enter and duke it out. Now, the level design in MechWarrior Online allows for some really interesting gameplay. Now, the level design leaves it so certain mechs can do certain things. For example, lightweight and medium mechs are usually the ones with the jetpacks, the jump jets, whatever you want to call them, and they are usually the only ones that can get to certain points high up, because you need the jetpack to allow you to get over certain ridges. Now, of course, if you're stuck in canals, the heavy mechs should probably go first because they're the first ones to get hit and they can take more damage. So that really allows the heavies to shine, to really soak up that damage. But in the end, the level design for MechWarrior Online, I feel like it's lacking something. It's lacking more depth. Now, I understand that this game doesn't really call for a lot of depths. It's kind of just you go in and you try and strategically place your team, try and engulf the other team, and try and overwhelm them and take them down. But I don't know. I feel like if they could incorporate different levels, top and bottom, or top, medium, bottom, and do something like that, I feel like this game would really shine, but they definitely have to do some work. So, in the end, the level design is a little plain, but at the same time pretty in-depth just because of how they made it and how they made it tailor to the different Mech Warriors types. Next up is the customization for Mech Warrior Online. This is really where this game shines. There is so much depth to the customization to this game that you could spend more than 50% of your game playing this game in the customization section. Every mech has its weight limit. Now that weight limit really gives you how much you can put on your mech. Now they also come with slots. Certain modules and loadouts, weapons, things like that take up more or less slots than others. Now the customization in this game is ridiculous. It is very overwhelming at first though. So for any new players, just sit down and try and do this, it's gonna be a little daunting at first. So you really just need to start to chip away at it, learn some basics, find a tutorial video, there's plenty of them out there, and just really get the hang of it, because the customization in this game is so vast, so incredibly well done, that you really need to micromanage this stuff. But, unfortunately, if that's not your kind of playstyle, if you don't like a game where you like to customize every inch of your mech, I don't believe this game is the game for you. Although, the default loadouts for the mechs are pretty good, but I really think that this game shines with its vast customization options, and I really think that you wouldn't be using the game to its full advantage if you didn't use those. So, the final section for Mech Warrior Online is the mech options. When you first start this game, if you are playing payless, like myself, you have 4 trial mechs to choose from. From what I can see, it's a lightweight, medium weight, heavyweight, and then an Atlas, which is the heaviest of weights, which is the really, really tanky ones. Unfortunately, with these trial mechs, you can't customize them, you can't change your loadouts, you can't do anything with them but jump in a game and play. Now, I think that this is really doing a bit of a disservice to it, because anybody who jumps into this game, and because the trial mechs rotate every so often, there's new ones all the time, I don't think that some people might not get the playing experience that they desire from this game, and it would be a real shame because this is a wonderful game. I believe that it would be better if you were given a copy of these trial mechs, that you could do whatever you would want, and then you can use these mechs to rank up points in order to purchase your own mech that you can, again, customize to, and then maybe the trial mech's data would be wiped at the end of its rotation. Unfortunately, because of the trial mech situation, you don't get into the customization, the real meat of the game, until you have bought and purchased your own mech. And that takes a few hours of play in my experience to get to that point, to save up that many credits. But once you do, you can chip away at it, and it all come to you. So, in the end, I'm a little disappointed as to how the trial mech situation is done, and how you're not given your own personal mech to begin with. But, in a way, I kind of understand, because they don't want to just throw you into the deep end of the vast customization system, and you get lost, put the game down, and never play it again. Because this game really is a lot of fun. Okay, so, to summarize everything, for the combat, it's kind of slow at first, but it really builds up and gets very challenging. The movement in this game is very challenging to get at first, but once you get the hang of it, you can get right into it and you can enjoy your time. No healing whatsoever, and no respawn. Level design is a large playing field which has canals running through the entire thing, but lacks depth. Customization. The real meat of the game, in my honest opinion. It's very in-depth, but very daunting at first. You can spend more time customizing your mech than you can even playing the game. But don't be afraid to take it very slow and just chip away at it. And lastly, mech options. 4 trial mechs at the very beginning. You have to play for a considerable amount of time to get your very own mech, and you cannot customize those trial mechs. But, in the end, they get you in the game. So, in the end of this all, do you think that it's fair to compare these games? Because I sure don't. These games' playstyle are very different from each other. Hawken is a very fast-paced, fluid-moving, but, in a way, generic FPS fashion, while MechWarrior Online is a very strategic and slow-paced, at first, MechWarrior game which the movement system takes a little while to get used to. Personally, I play Hawken a little more just because it's more simple, it's easier to get used to, I can jump in if I just want to play a quick game of it and jump out. But if I have the time on my hands, I will sit there for hours and customize my mech in MechWarrior Online. It's, to me, a lot of fun. But, hey, that's just my opinion. Don't take my word for it. Get out there and give them both a download. They're free, and they're fun. So, thank you guys so much for watching. If you have any comments, concerns, criticism, anything that I missed that I should mention, please feel free to leave it to me. Again, thank you so much for watching, and stay pappy.